2010. You just got onto the Xbox 360 to play Halo Reach. You load into a match lobby, having people trash talk and overall just having fun. But then you get absolutely destroyed by a really high ranked player. Instead of complaining about the player being good, you send him a friend request. Now today, if you die or lose to someone who is better, you'll usually respond by raging or saying insults. Why is it like this now? One word: uniqueness. Competitive games and esports are no new concept, and in fact have been around for decades.
Happy feet, wombo combo. That ain't Falco. That ain't Falco.
The difference between games back then and today was competitive was seen as a secondary goal. Rather than today, its main goal is to be competitively viable. Some people might say they enjoy a game competitively for the sense of improvement they get. However, is it the competitive aspect they find fun, or that playing competitively is the only way to play the game? Almost every single FPS now is a competitive game. Telling someone to just find a recent AAA casual shooter is impossible. This is why games like BattleBit succeeded so much in the first place, because it was the only casual shooter we've had recently. In some cases, even playing the casual game mode designed in shooters, people treat it as competitive. So how did we even end up in a competitive gaming era? Money. The year is 2019, and Fortnite is popping off. But Fortnite wants to do something insane. It wants to have one of the biggest video game tournaments ever, which it did succeed at, having a $3 million prize for the winner. The winner of it being a 16-year-old kid named Bugha, having the dream of a lifetime. But now every single game is seeing this story and wants to copy what Fortnite did, like they did with the battle passes. The problem with this is that Fortnite was a casual game turned competitive, with it naturally becoming competitive. Every other game now is trying to create a good esports by forcing it to be competitively viable. This is the year I believe a lot of games lost their original identity they had. In order for a game to be competitively viable, they need to keep as much unchanged. That's why games will feel bland, because a thing that is competitively good is when nothing is changed or added. So when you want a game to be competitively viable, understand it's going to lack content. This is why major sports like the NFL or NBA have had very few rule changes recently. The way sports counteract this is with narrative. Stories and players will always carry the game rather than the game itself. But it seems video game companies don't understand this. Look at the NFL. On paper, Tom Brady shouldn't have brought in viewers because he wasn't necessarily the most enjoyable player to watch. But what he did have was a story. Besides the fact that he kept on winning, Tom Brady wasn't exactly physically gifted compared to other NFL players. But he used that to motivate him and used anyone not believing in him to fuel him. It was ridiculous how strong mentally Tom Brady was compared to any other player, and why he is considered the greatest of all time.
They have completed the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history, led by the greatest quarterback. Look at Brady in Super Bowl and NFL annals.
It's not necessarily the fault of the games, but in the sense of narrative, it was bound to fail. The reason why is because competitive players in video games are some of the most sensitive players I have ever seen. Trash talking is nearly dead in this era. Sportsmanship is important, but trash talking is not that deep. Killing one of the most vital things in gaming history is depressing to say the least.
Sitting in front of your goddamn Kinect mic with your nuts hanging out of one side of your shorts. Shut the fuck up!
Because of how easy it is to get banned for trash talking in gaming, it's just not worth it to say anything anymore. This is why VCs in games, competitive or not, are a ghost town now.
Look at this place. 50,000 people used to live in the city. Now it's a ghost town.
In the beginning of the video, I mentioned uniqueness. Back then in gaming, chasing to be good at a game was seen as unique. But now, since everyone is trying to be good, people who are just playing casually are now the unique ones. This is also why games are creating tools to make it easier to get into competitive. Look at how aim assist is now suddenly a problem despite it being around for decades. This is because they have severely increased its values. Video games want to make everyone have a fair chance at being competitively good. However, this is how competitive should never work in any sort of environment. Having an insane rise of people being able to compete at the top level because of decisions games have made makes pro plays seem very bland in gaming. Having too many players be on pro teams makes no one care for your narrative. Because FPSs now force you to play competitively, this causes too many players to play at the high level. This also causes roster changes to happen constantly in gaming. No one finds a team in rebuild mode every year entertaining. They find dominant players like Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, or LeBron James entertaining. But because there seems to be a new god at the game every year, no one feels unique. Players in games are also forcing people to play the game a certain way. This is why meta became a thing in the first place for competitive games. No one is playing what they find fun anymore, they're playing what is competitively viable. It is ironic that one-tricks in games are hated despite the fact they are probably the only players who are playing for fun. I believe the overall atmosphere for gaming now is extremely unhealthy, considering that this take is now considered a hot take in the Overwatch community. I also don't find it a coincidence that FPS games and games in general are being complained about so much recently, because a part of the competitive atmosphere is people who will look for excuses on why they are not where they want to be. Despite trash talking being heavily mandated, gaming in general is actually more toxic than it has ever been. Also, the belief that casual games can't have skill representation is so false. Look at games like TF2, which is still considered a casual game, has some of the highest skill representation possible. Game developers also need to realize that once a player is competitively attached to a game, it is almost impossible for them to go back to being a casual. This is why Overwatch 2's PvE was going to fail no matter what. Sure, it might have been good short term in bringing casual players back in, but at its core, Overwatch is a competitive game, so once players ran out of PvE, they're just gonna leave Overwatch again. It wasn't really gonna change much about the game, considering most top players were open about not caring about the PvE in the first place. I really just hope that one day we will get a AAA shooter designed to be casual, but considering all the shooters that were designed to be a casual game have been forced to become competitive, I fear those days in gaming are gone. Hopefully, with some of the recent games failing financially for competitive, this will change their mindset, but we will have to wait and see.